He built an empire from nothing, a self-made millionaire named David who believed any problem had a price. But the news delivered in that pristine hospital room was one his fortune couldn't touch. His only son, Leo, his entire world, was given just 60 days to live. The doctors had no answers, the specialists no hope. It was a death sentence written in medical charts and helpless shrugs. And in the shadow of that immense grief, the most quiet and unexpected person in that grand home, their housekeeper Maria, was about to make a choice. A decision born of a love so profound, so selfless, that it would challenge everything David thought he knew about strength and sacrifice, leaving the powerful man shattered and forever changed. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This is the story of a love that defied fate. This is not merely a story about a terminal illness. It is a story about the silent burdens carried by those we overlook, the profound secrets kept out of devotion, and the unimaginable risks taken for a child who was not her own. As David's world collapsed under the weight of his son's prognosis, Maria, the woman who had quietly maintained their home for over a decade, was concealing a resolve that would alter their destinies forever. What hidden knowledge or profound connection could compel a woman of such humble means to make the ultimate gamble with her own health? What desperate clandestine plan did she formulate while moving silently through the halls of that grieving mansion? And how could a single act of defiance against a death sentence bring a titan of industry, a man who faced down corporate rivals without flinching, to his knees, weeping with a vulnerability he never knew he possessed? The answers lie not in a boardroom, but in the heart of a woman everyone failed to see. To understand the depth of the sacrifice, you must first understand the players. David's story was one of relentless ambition and profound loss. He built his fortune from the ground up, a testament to his belief that any obstacle could be overcome with enough will and resources. His greatest joy was his wife, Evelyn, and his greatest tragedy was losing her to a sudden illness shortly after their son Leo was born. From that moment, David's entire existence narrowed to two purposes: expanding his empire and protecting his boy. Leo was more than a son. He was the living legacy of the love he had lost, and David devoted himself entirely to providing a life where Leo would want for nothing. Leo, in turn, grew into a compassionate and energetic young man. He loved baseball and spent his weekends on the field, his laughter a sharp contrast to the quiet intensity of his father's world. Despite the privilege, he remained remarkably grounded, a credit to the values David instilled. And then there was Maria. She entered their lives as a housekeeper over a decade ago, a steady presence hired to bring order to a home shaken by grief. To David, she was efficient and invisible, part of the household's seamless operation. But her role was far deeper. She was the one who remembered Leo's favorite meals, who noticed when he was quieter than usual, who offered a gentle, consistent care that went beyond her duties. In her small private quarters, a well-worn textbook on human anatomy sat on her nightstand, a hint of a knowledge she never spoke of, a past life carefully set aside. She watched over Leo not as an employee, but as a silent guardian, her investment in his well-being absolute and unwavering. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came on an ordinary Saturday afternoon. Leo was in the middle of a baseball game when he suddenly collapsed in the outfield. What followed was a frantic race against time, a blur of sirens and panic as David rushed his son to the most advanced medical center his money could access. After a battery of tests that felt like an eternity, the doctors delivered a diagnosis far more devastating than anyone could have imagined. It wasn't just leukemia. It was a rare and aggressive form that had triggered sudden and catastrophic liver failure. David's response was immediate and fierce. He was on the phone within minutes, his voice a mixture of fury and desperation, using every connection, calling in every favor to summon the world's top specialists. He chartered private jets. He offered blank checks. He demanded solutions. But each world-renowned expert who arrived delivered the same cruel truth. The only thing that could save Leo now was a transplant. a new liver. He was immediately placed on the National Registry, but the waiting list was impossibly long, a line of thousands where time was the one commodity even David couldn't buy. As Leo grew weaker, his skin taking on a sickly yellow hue, a senior doctor pulled David into a quiet hallway. His voice was low and grave. "The wait list could be years, Mr. Thompson. Given how rapidly the disease is progressing, I must be blunt. Without a living donor coming forward immediately, a miracle, his time is measured in weeks." The first thing David did was get tested himself, certain that his own body would provide the solution, that his DNA would finally be the currency to save his son. The results were a final, crushing blow. He was not a match. The one thing he thought he could always count on, his own being, had failed him. This failure ignited a desperate and public campaign. He offered staggering financial incentives to extended family, to employees, even to strangers. He launched a media blitz, his face plastered on news channels, a billionaire begging for a miracle. It created a circus of hope and disappointment, but yielded no viable match. All the while, Maria watched. She saw David's hope turn to despair with each passing day. She sat with Leo, reading to him as his strength faded, her heart breaking. A resolve began to form within her, a quiet but steely determination. On her next day off, instead of resting, she went to the public library. On a computer in a quiet corner, she typed a search that would change everything. How to be tested as a living liver donor. The following week, she called in sick. She went to a hospital across town, one where no one would recognize her, and began the battery of tests. The process was long, invasive, and filled with anxiety. She spent hours in waiting rooms, filled out countless forms, and underwent scans and blood draws, each moment filled with a silent prayer that she would be the answer. A week later, a phone call came to Maria's small apartment. The coordinator from the transplant program was on the line. The results were in. Maria held her breath, her entire world narrowing to that single moment. And then the words came. She was a perfect match. The news was overwhelming, a wave of fear and incredible purpose. She was now faced with an impossible choice. She would have to undergo a major life-threatening surgery for a child who was not her own, and she would have to do it in complete secrecy, knowing David would never allow it if he knew. Her motive was not out of duty or expectation. In a quiet conversation with a pre-op nurse who asked why she would do this, Maria's story finally surfaced. Years ago, in her home country, she had lost a young son to an illness she couldn't afford to treat. The grief had never left her. In Leo, she had found a second chance to save a life, to pour all that lost love into a boy who felt like her own. It was a debt to her past and a pure, selfless act of love for her present. Her decision was made. She contacted the transplant coordinator and agreed to everything. Using a pseudonym to protect her identity from David, she began the rigorous preoperative process, signing the forms that would allow her to give a part of herself to save Leo, all while continuing her daily duties as if nothing had changed. Back at the mansion, Leo's condition plummeted. His small body was losing its fight, his systems beginning to shut down. The doctors sat David down, their faces etched with a grim finality, and began to discuss end-of-life care. They were preparing him for the inevitable, for a pain no fortune could ever alleviate. In his haze of utter grief, David's mind, grasping for some semblance of control, fixated on an absence. He realized he hadn't seen Maria in 2 days. Her uniform was hung neatly. Her small room was orderly. But she was gone. In his despair, he could only see abandonment. He believed she had left, like so many others he felt had failed him, unable to witness the final act of the tragedy. This perceived betrayal twisted the knife of his loss, compounding his grief with a bitter, isolating anger. He was completely alone, staring into the abyss. And then, the phone rang. He almost didn't answer, assuming it was another distant relative offering hollow condolences. But the voice on the other end was different. It was a social worker from the hospital, her tone urgent, yet infused with a strange, cautious hope. "Mr. Thompson, we need you to come to the hospital immediately. It's urgent. It's about a donor. A living donor has come forward for Leo." The words hung in the air, a lifeline thrown into his darkness from a source he could never have imagined. David raced to the hospital, his mind a storm of confusion and fragile hope. A doctor met him, explaining that a perfect match had been found through a private screening and that the transplant surgery was being prepared at that very moment. Leo was being prepped for the operating room. David was overjoyed, tears of relief streaming down his face as he grabbed the doctor's arms. Who is it? I need to thank them. I need to give them everything." The doctor, bound by patient confidentiality, was hesitant, but the extraordinary nature of the situation persuaded him. He led David down a series of corridors, not to the operating theaters, but to the recovery wing. He stopped outside a closed door. David pushed it open, his heart full of gratitude for a stranger. But the person in the bed was no stranger. There, lying pale and fragile amidst a tangle of IV lines and beeping monitors, was Maria. The reality of her absence, the secret tests, the immense risk she had taken, it all crashed down upon him at once. The woman he had dismissed as staff, the person he had believed abandoned them, had given a part of her own body to save his son. The staggering weight of her sacrifice, the profound shame of his own misjudgment, and the overwhelming wave of gratitude collided within him. David's legs buckled. He fell to his knees beside her bed, his body racked with silent, heaving sobs, his face pressed against the sheets as he finally understood the depth of a love that asked for nothing in return. In the days and weeks that followed, a miracle quietly unfolded. Leo's body, so close to surrender, began to accept the gift it had been given. The sickly yellow tint in his skin receded, replaced by a healthy glow. His strength, once fading, slowly returned day by day. Across the hall, Maria began her own difficult recovery, each day a testament to her incredible strength. David was there for every step of it. He was no longer her employer. He became her most devoted guardian, ensuring she had the absolute best care, personally handling her medical needs and making certain she wanted for nothing. The dynamic between them was forever transformed. The sprawling mansion, once a house divided by roles of master and servant, became a home for a new kind of family, bound by an unbreakable bond forged in sacrifice and gratitude. The final scene finds them 1 year later, gathered in the garden on a sunny afternoon. Leo, now healthy and full of life, chases a butterfly, his laughter echoing in the air. David stands beside Maria watching him. He doesn't look at her with pity, but with a profound and unwavering respect, his eyes conveying a love and gratitude that words could never fully express. She had not only saved his son, she had saved him, pulling him back from the brink of despair and showing him a truth about love and strength that his fortune never could. This story challenges us to truly see the people who move quietly through our lives, the individuals we often overlook in our daily routines. It demands we consider the meaning of true sacrifice and recognize that the most profound courage is often found not in grand gestures of power, but in quiet acts of selflessness. Maria possessed no vast fortune or influence. What she held was something infinitely more powerful, a heart capable of giving everything, asking for nothing in return, driven by a love that transcended biology and social standing. Her story is a permanent reminder that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear a simple uniform and hold a dust rag, their extraordinary strength hidden in plain sight. We want to know what you think after witnessing this incredible journey. Could you envision making a sacrifice of that magnitude for a child not your own? What does Maria's actions tell us about the quiet, hidden heroes living among us whose stories often go untold? Let us know your thoughts and reflections in the comments below, and tell us where you are watching from. We truly love connecting with our audience. Share this story far and wide to honor the unseen heroes in our world. And please, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next exploration into the depths of the human spirit and the incredible power of love.